This moving season.
It's been an unbelievable NHL season. One for the history books. Offense like we haven't seen in 30 years. Storylines everywhere. And entertainment like we haven't seen in years. Maybe even the best season ever? It's gotta be up there, and so it was only fitting that we'd get an unbelievable finale heading into the playoffs. See, coming into tonight's matchup against the Capitals, the Flyers had just a 6% chance of making it. But they had a chance. As for the Capitals, they just needed a win and they were in. Meanwhile, after that incredible comeback last night at home, the Red Wings over in Montreal now just needed a win in any fashion so long as the Capitals lost to the Flyers. So it was set to be a wild finish and presented some interesting scenarios. As Elliot Friedman pointed out, the Flyers had to get a regulation win. So should they be tied in the third period, they were likely to pull their goalie in regulation because an OT win did them no good. And yeah, of course that happened. But there was so much more to it than that. I want to quickly show how we got here because the Flyers got hosed a bit. It was 8 minutes in, Flyers in, Farabee shoots, and where is it? It's in the back of the net. But immediately the ref says no goal, and this was wild. Take a look here. Lindgren makes the save. Puck redirects way up, and while no one seems to know where it is, it happens to come down, redirect off Farabee, and goes in. This is a good goal. Torts on the bench, seeing it, the puck's in the air. But here's the problem. Sutherland, losing sight of it, blew the whistle. Take a listen.
Snapshot off the curl and drag. Fought off there by Lindgren. He didn't have it.
See, he blew the whistle and blew the call, unfortunately. You could argue it was a continuous play, regardless of the whistle, but while the puck was still in motion, the second it redirects off of Farabee here, the play is technically dead. So it was the wrong call on the ice, but the right call after review, as this was not a good goal. And I was thinking, imagine this game comes down to one goal. Well, naturally, the Capitals in now. McElrath shoots and they score. It's redirected off of Ovi in front with his 31st of the year, and the Capitals, with under 2 to go, took the oh so important lead and would hold that lead heading into the middle frame, where it was the Flyers pushing back just over the net here, but shortly after, Zamula from way out the shot, and they score. With traffic in front, it's Erik Johnson with the redirect, just his 5th of the year, but it's a big one as the Flyers had tied the game. And that is how things stayed late into the third and final period. And so, with time taken away, it gets us back to the scenario Friedman had pointed out. And sure enough, they were definitely talking about it, but pause. Because little did they know, this didn't matter. Over in Montreal, it was the Red Wings with the goalie pulled. In what was a 1-goal game late in the third, the Canadiens clear it and the officials gave them the icing. It's close, a bit controversial here, but they gave it to him and they had just enough time. It's Gostisbehere to Perron, the shot, and he scores. Perron with the buzzer beater to push the game into overtime, which meant not only did they keep their play playoff hopes alive, they had officially eliminated the Flyers from the playoffs. However, back in Philly now, Torts had no idea this had just happened. So again, thinking they were still alive, he pulled his goalie in a tied hockey game, and almost immediately after, it's TJ Oshie with the empty netter to just about seal the deal. And guess what this meant? Just after the Red Wings had eliminated the Flyers from the playoffs by securing OT, by pulling their goalie and giving up this empty netter, the Flyers returned the favor almost immediately, eliminating the Red Wings from the playoffs. I mean, come on. And so, even though Showtime Patrick Kane wound up taking it in a shootout, they knew it. It didn't matter anyway, as the Capitals, who 2.5 months ago had less than a 5% chance of making it, would end up holding on and punch their ticket to the playoffs with the final wildcard slot. That's right, the Capitals with a minus 37 goal differential. But look at that smile. It doesn't matter how you got there. It's definitely a tough pill to swallow, but hey, congrats to the Caps. And yeah, that's about it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it very much, and I'll see you in the next one.
We want it all. We want beer.
Tonight was just so heartbreaking for the Detroit Red Wings. I cannot get over how things played out. As we discussed in yesterday's video, tonight had the potential to decide the Eastern Conference playoff teams, and it did. I'm not going to recap everything, but essentially Detroit needed to win to stay in it. The Flyers, if they wanted a chance, needed to beat Washington in regulation, and Washington simply needed a win of any type to secure their playoff spot. Making things more dramatic was the fact that Detroit and Montreal and Washington and Philly both ended within 5 minutes of each other. I was going back and forth, mostly watching the Washington-Philly game because it determined everything else. Honestly, a pretty boring matchup. Philly was down 1-0. They tied it. Again, they needed that regulation win. So with 3 minutes left, they pull their goalie in. Just put a pin in that. We'll come back to it. Detroit, on the other hand, had an incredible comeback, almost identical to what they did last night. Pretty poor, low-effort play in the first 2 periods. Saw them go down 3-1. They'd make it 3-2 before the beginning of the third. Then Daniel Sprong's super high-effort play ends up getting an ugly one, but only after forechecking his sack off. That would tie it 3-3. However, the Canadians, hoping to play spoiler, would actually take the lead late in the third. And I mean, you gotta feel great watching this as a Canadians fan because it was Slafkovsky from Hudson. This is the future. It was Hudson's first game last time. You guys are kind of angry I didn't talk about that. Here, he makes NHL players look silly, dancing Cale Makar style on the blue line. You love to see it. Anyway, like 10 seconds left in the game, the Red Wings get a very fortunate icing call, I'll call it that. Keeps the game alive, and David Perron ties it, and obviously the team goes completely wild. This is basically the same crew that was out there on the tying goal last night, and at this point, Philadelphia is essentially eliminated from the playoffs because even if they win their game in regulation against Washington, they'll lose out. Detroit would have at minimum 90 points. They would have 89. However, and let's jump back to that game, apparently Torts either didn't get the message or didn't care because almost right after that happened and Philly's fate was sealed, he pulls the goalie to try to get that regulation win, but Washington scores, they go up 2-1, and that would be the final score despite some good late game pressure. Now back to Detroit, they fulfill their end of the bargain, winning the game in the shootout, despite having to kill off a penalty in overtime. And I mean, it was perfect. Patty Kane is the 6th shooter, scoring the only goal of the shootout, but again, it didn't matter. What's extra frustrating, however, is that there were a couple of missed calls, or really just bad calls in that Washington Flyers game, and one in particular was egregious. About 10 minutes in the first, Kelly Sutherland, and really everyone on the ice, loses track of the puck. They assume the goalie has it. Really, it's in the air. It comes down, bounces in off Joel Farabee. This should have been a goal. However, Kelly Sutherland blew the whistle. On review, I mean, it was the right call. When the whistle is blown, the play is dead. However, this was a major screw up by Kelly Sutherland. It literally affected the fate of 3 teams. This would have given the Flyers an early lead. It's an unacceptable call. It really is. I understand it. Everyone lost sight of the puck, but it stinks. Near the end of the game, also a missed too many men penalty on Washington at a crucial moment. Like, everyone was watching this game. Again, multiple seasons on the line, just not really acceptable officiating, unfortunately. But that's all I've got. Congratulations, Washington. You will now be playing my New York Rangers. I've got to say, I don't want to jinx things. As just a general hockey fan, I wanted to see either Pittsburgh or Detroit in the playoffs. As a Rangers fan, however, I think Washington is at least less dangerous than the Penguins, probably Detroit as well. But it's the playoffs. Washington could beat New York. They could sweep them. It's the playoffs. Let's see how it goes. And still watching that Toronto game as Matthews is on 70 watch, and I don't think he wants to play the final game of the season against Tampa.